From the headquarters of the American Radio Relay League in Newington, Connecticut, this is ARRL Audio News for Friday, July 21st, 2017. This program is produced by the ARRL, the National Association for Amateur Radio, and features news highlights compiled from the ARRL letter, found on the web at arrl.org. I'm Sean Kutzko, KX9X. Carla Pereira, KC1HSX, is on assignment this week. In this week's report, the Amateur Radio Parity Act is introduced in the U.S. Senate. A revised FCC Form 605 will ask applicants the felony question. And Honolulu hosts a successful 10th annual Geek Meet, and ham radio is there. Those stories and others, plus Bruce Page, KK5DO with this week's satellite update, all coming up now.
Hi, I'm ARRL member Stephanie Shooks, N8WSU of Black Lake, Ohio, and you're listening to ARRL Audio News.
The Amateur Radio Parity Act of 2017 was introduced in the U.S. Senate on July 12th, marking another step forward for this landmark legislation. Senators Roger Wicker of Mississippi and Richard Blumenthal of Connecticut are the Senate sponsors. The measure will, for the first time, guarantee all radio amateurs living in deed-restricted communities governed by a homeowners association or subject to any private land use regulations the right to erect and maintain effective outdoor antennas at their homes. The Senate Bill S-1534 is identical to H.R. 555, which passed the U.S. House of Representatives in January. Amateur radio continues to be a critical part of our emergency communications operations, Wicker said. Mississippians learned firsthand after Hurricane Katrina how amateur radio operators can provide a resilient, distributed network to first responders and disaster relief organizations when other communications tools fail. Amateur radio operators provide an invaluable service to their communities by assisting local emergency communication efforts when disasters occur and main lines are down, Blumenthal said. This bipartisan measure ensures that operators have access to the tools they need to support our first responders when lives are at stake. ARRL President Rick Roderick, K5UR, expressed the League's appreciation to the Senate sponsors. ARRL is grateful for the support of Senators Wicker and Blumenthal for sponsoring this important piece of legislation and for advocating this bill for the past 3 years, Roderick said. Their continuing support is critical to the success of our efforts. In a statement, ARRL said it looks forward to working with the bipartisan leadership of the Senate and the Commerce Committee to help move the Wicker-Blumenthal legislation through the Senate and to the President's desk. A revised FCC Form 605, going into effect in September, will ask all applicants to indicate if they have been convicted of or pled guilty to a felony. The Communications Act obliges the Commission to ask the felony question, as it did on the old Form 610 and still does on other applications. This action will correct its omission on Form 605, which has existed for years. Applicants' responses and explanations will be used to determine eligibility to be a Commission licensee. The FCC told ARRL that it's still deciding whether to issue a public notice on the change. The revision will also apply to NCVEC Form 605, the unofficial amateur radio-specific version of the application that is completed and filed at Volunteer Examiner Coordinator, or VEC, examination sessions. VECs will have to start using the revised form on September 7th. ARRL VEC Manager and NCVEC Vice Chair Maria Soma, AB1FM, thanked the FCC for honoring a request to amend the effective date of the change. At the urging of the NCVEC leadership, the FCC took into consideration the undertaking to change and distribute all affected forms and update software and agreed to push back the execution date by 1 month, she said. The NCVEC will create a revised NCVEC Form 605 and release it to VE teams before September 7th. Power supplies is the topic of the latest episode of the ARRL The Doctor Is In podcast. Sponsored by DX Engineering, ARRL The Doctor Is In is an informative discussion of all things technical. Listen on your computer, tablet, or smartphone, whenever and wherever you like. Every 2 weeks, your host, QST Editor-in-Chief Steve Ford, WB8IMY, and the doctor himself, Joel Hallis, W1ZR, will discuss a broad range of technical topics. You can also email questions to doctor@arrl.org, and the doctor may answer them in a future podcast. You can enjoy ARRL The Doctor Is In on Apple iTunes or by using your iPhone or iPad podcast app. You can also listen online at Blueberry or at Stitcher and through the free Stitcher app for iOS, Kindle, or Android devices.
Online, via podcast, and on repeaters around the world, you're listening to ARRL Audio News.
Now with this week's satellite update, here's Bruce Page, KK5DO.
If you are new to satellites and do not have a tracking program, you can use the AMSAT Online Satellite Past Predictions. You can find it on amsat.org. Click on Satellite Info and select Past Prediction. Choose a satellite you would like a prediction for and enter your grid square or lat long. Now you're ready to go outside and see if you can hear the satellite. Please remember, almost all the satellites will have someone on, and if you do not hear activity, it does not mean there is no one there. It means you might not be hearing it. Verify that your downlink frequency is correct. Adjust up or down if necessary for Doppler, and make sure you are pointing your antenna to the correct place. Once you hear activity, wait for an opening and give your call. There's no need to call CQ on an FM satellite. It is simply an FM repeater with a really high antenna. On the sideband birds, you will want to tune around, find yourself, see if you hear the others, and either work them or slide up or down in the passband, and then call CQ when you are in the clear. Lots of fun. This is Bruce Page, KK5DO, for the ARRL Audio News.
Radio amateurs from several states will gather in southern Illinois August 17th through the 21st to operate special event station W9E leading up to and during the 2017 solar eclipse on August 21st. W9E, which will operate from Marion, Illinois, is one of several announced solar eclipse special events. This will be the first total eclipse on American soil since 1991, the first on the mainland United States since 1979, and the first to sweep across the entire country since 1918. It will be an event you do not want to miss, the W9E announcement said. The far southern tip of the state of Illinois is the only place viewers can see the totality of the eclipse. W9E plans to operate on 80, 40, and 20 meters, and perhaps other bands if conditions permit, on CW, sideband, and digital modes. All amateur operators visiting the area for the eclipse are invited to visit. A copy of your license and photo ID are required to operate the special event station. Amateur radio license testing will also be offered during the event. A list of other special event stations on during the eclipse is available on the ARRL website's special events calendar. The Solar Eclipse QSO Party, sponsored by HAMSI, will take place on August 21st from 1400 to 2200 UTC. For complete information on the Solar Eclipse QSO Party, you can visit hamsci.org. Last February, many HF listeners across North America and elsewhere were able to copy signals from Alaska's High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, or HAARP, during its first scientific research campaign since it was taken over by the University of Alaska Fairbanks Geophysical Institute in 2015. UAF Space Physics Group Assistant Research Professor Chris Fallon, KL3WX, told ARRL this week that the next HAARP research campaign, which will get underway in mid to late September, will carry on the experiments begun during the previous campaigns. This time, though, even more listeners may be able to hear HAARP. Similar to the February campaign, I plan to inform listeners of selected experiment activities, allowing hams and SWLs to tune in and collectively participate, Fallon said. One notable difference between the previous campaign is that another column of transmitter shelters at HAARP will be operational, both increasing the HAARP net transmitted power to 80% of its nominal 3.6 megawatts and increasing its antenna gain. In advance of the September scientific campaign, HAARP will hold an open house on August 19th. Throughout the day, there will be talks by Geophysical Institute researchers on site about the HAARP facility and research, and other research topics pursued at the UAF Geophysical Institute, Fallon said. As in the previous year, tours of the main transmitter array, control center, and power generation plant will be offered throughout the day. Hams and radio enthusiasts are encouraged to bring their equipment for photo opportunities or even to make contacts from the site. You can follow HAARP on its official Facebook page or via their Twitter account at UAFHAARP. International Amateur Radio Union Region 1 President Don Beatty, G3BJ, told an audience at Ham Radio 2017 in Friedrichshafen, Germany, that he is deeply concerned about our ability to maintain a usable radio spectrum in some parts of suburban Europe. Beatty said that amateur radio spectrum allocations are of little value if they are made unusable by the presence of multiple sources of interference, be it electrical interference or intruders in the amateur bands. Beatty said that the IARU is deeply involved in the work of the international standards organizations, arguing for common sense in the setting of emission standards for electrical and electronic devices. He cited solar photovoltaic arrays, wind generators, digital devices, VDSL, and wireless power transfer technology as areas of current concern. Some would say that even with the work we are involved in on standards, much of the radio spectrum is becoming unusable in the suburban environment, Beatty said.
Hi, I'm ARRL member John Creel, WB3GXW of Silver Spring, Maryland, and you are listening to ARRL Audio News.
And finally, in the middle of Honolulu, amateur radio was there on July 2nd for the 10th annual Geek Meet at Magic Island. Hawaii's Geek Meet is a fun, casual, family-friendly, grassroots gathering for people who are curious and have a passion they want to share, including amateur radio. Members of the Emergency Amateur Radio Club of Honolulu and Pacific Section Public Information Officer Stacy Holbrook, KH6OWL, staffed a booth at the 2017 Geek Meet. We had over 200 visitors to our booth and signed several up for possible attendance at amateur radio classes, Holbrook said. He said other local and visiting radio amateurs stopped by throughout the day-long event to show their support, and some even stayed to handle booth duty. One of Geek Meet's founders, Ryan Ozawa, KH6WEB, said ham radio has been a part of the event every year from the very beginning. Holbrook said youngsters visiting the booth enjoyed tinkering with a Morse code demonstration and spelled out their names in code. This was a great event and helped showcase what amateur radio is all about, Holbrook said. It is a hobby, not just emergency communications, but that is a big part, and we discussed that with others too. That concludes ARRL Audio News for this week. Our thanks to all contributors to this week's report. ARRL Audio News is produced by the American Radio Relay League, the National Association for Amateur Radio. For more information on amateur radio or the ARRL, visit us on the web at arrl.org. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram by searching for ARRL. If you have a question or comment about audio news, email us at audionews@arrl.org. This program is copyright 2017 ARRL. All rights reserved. Until next week, I'm Sean Kutzko, KX9X 73, and thanks for listening.